Hey, this is Matt from the Woodworking Nook. Today we make a jig to make round tapered legs. So this is a pretty simple jig. It's just comprised of four base parts, which are then glued to this top piece, which is like a base for the track saw. So right here I'm cutting out two smaller pieces for the ends that has the screws that hold the workpiece. So these are just 4 inches by 2 inches each on each side. So just cutting these out to size and using that painter's tape method to cut them out so that they don't move around, and I can cut these smaller pieces out. And then for the side pieces, they are 8 inches long because each of these tapered legs will be 6 inches long. So it gives us about a 1 inch on each side gap for the workpiece. And then the slant on them, I just kind of came up with it. I wanted to have around 1.5 inches top of the tapered leg and have it go all the way down to a 3/4 of an inch. So I just kind of measured that out, and I got that slant there. I believe it's like 3 degrees, 4 degrees, something like that. But that I just kind of made up on my own. And that slant will give us that taper that we're looking for each of the legs. Then we just place the track saw on top to follow the slope down. So now I'm just cutting the holes out on each of the end pieces where the screws will go to hold the workpiece. So now I'm going to be cutting holes on the side to that sloped area. That way I can just kind of take a peek in and see how the leg is doing, and to give it space for all the shavings to find a way out. So now I'm gonna take all 4 pieces and just glue and brad nail them in, just making sure that they're all square on each end. And then we attach the top piece. But before that, I actually added like a little viewport again so that I can see in to make sure everything is going well in terms of cutting the leg out. So you can see with that viewport, I'll be able to see inside there. Now just marking where that jig will line up. That way I can just brad nail it in from the top. Nice and simple. And then marking where that saw blade will actually cut down the middle, where I should place my track saw. And I cut an additional slanted piece, but it actually wasn't quite right to size, so I just had to trim it off a little bit there. And this will help give me area to clamp the jig down so that it doesn't move around while I'm cutting. So now what I'm going to do is cut out the blanks for the tapered legs. These are just out of 3/4 inch maple. So I'm going to cut them about 1.5 inches wide so that I can glue them together, which will give me an 1.5 by 1.5 block. So just using my combination square to make sure each cut is the same, and then using that painter's tape method to tape them down so that they don't move around. And then once I was done cutting all these out, I glued them together to create those blank stocks for the tapered legs. Once the glue was dry, I pulled them out of the clamps and kind of got them ready to wrap the edges. So ideally there's a way to just give a little chamfer to each of the sides of the edges. That way there's not as much material you're removing. And I didn't create a jig for this to do it with the track saw. I'm sure there's a great way to do it. I just ended up doing this with a router with a 45-degree chamfer bit. Not an ideal way. It kind of took a while and just a lot of wood shavings coming from it. But it worked fine and it got the job done. It felt like it was more of a brute force way of getting this done. Once that was finished, cleaned up all the shavings from this, and then I needed to cut each blanket down to the correct size. Each of the legs are 6 inches long, and my first cut I needed to trim the end so that it would have a nice square side to it. And I just used 2x4s to help space it out. I also used those super tall bench dogs to help align the track with my piece that I'm cutting so that everything would end up square. I don't use this process as much as I should. It's kind of nice just to be able to butt everything up and know that everything will be turning out square. And I cut an extra just in case something were to go wrong with one of them. The next step was to drill out the center of each of the tapered legs. This process was kind of easy just because there was that center line already there from the glued together blanks. So just drill the hole in the center so that I could feed the screws into them. So right now I'm measuring the depth that the track saw should go to give the appropriate taper. And I actually ended up going deeper than this. Somehow the measurement was off. But from this angle you can kind of see how this jig works. So now I'm gluing on a stop so that I can put the track back in the same place every single time, and I don't have to try to line it up with that that opening. Then it has the ability to be clamped down. So I'm going to make that cut first so I don't have to go through two things. So I'm using pretty long screws here. And with this first attempt, I'm using spacers. As you will see, these spacers do not work. They were plastic, and there's a lot of heat coming from this. So as you'll see in a second, this first try does technically work, but I burned through those spacers real quick. You also want to make sure you're behind the jig, pushing forward. That way everything is going forward and not towards your hand. So as you can see there, it burned right through that jig, which kind of caused it to not taper properly. So I ended up switching it out for a shorter screw and one that used, I believe, a T25 bit, which held it a lot better. The other ones were just long Phillips head screws. And you just spin the drill as fast as you can and then slowly go with the track saw. Again, everyone's comfort level is different when it comes to saws. This is not a traditional way of using your track saw, so you got to be careful with it. But it ended up working pretty well. And as you'll see in a little bit here, I did have one mishap where the end piece did come off. It unscrewed from it, and I was still drilling and the track saw was still going. But since it's all contained in the middle there, there's nowhere for it to fly out at you. And it's a pretty quick process. As long as you go slow, you should be good. As you can see, burning on the end there too. You also want to make sure both sides are fully tightened. That way there's no wiggle room for it to move around inside there. I ended up adding a washer on the end of these too to kind of help with the spinning and burning, but it only did so much. And here's where it unscrewed. And that was it. So that's what happens if the screw does come off. Not a major issue with wood flying through the air. Again, the saw could kick back even more than it did there. But you always want to be super careful with this. But since it is enclosed, it kind of gives us that added benefit of trying to keep us a little bit safer. And that's pretty much it. All the tapered legs turned out pretty good. They just need to be sanded down now, and they're ready to go. Thanks for watching.